And then there's another type of canceling the sale, which is to cancel it due to the defect of the item. So if the item is found to be defective, then the buyer can return it, with the condition that he returns it immediately, as soon as he discovers the defect. So you, as a truthful trades Muslim and one who fears Allah in his dealings, when you discover that defect and then you sat on it, don't go after that and say, hey, listen, I found this defect, I want my money back. You know religiously that once you sit on it and you don't return it immediately, you lose the right to cancel the sale because of the defect. So you must return it immediately. Immediately means in a normal way. In a normal way means you might have to wait until the daytime. Doesn't mean you have to be at their door as soon as they open their door at 7 a.m., for example. It doesn't mean you have to run to their store, or that you have to drop your spoon in the middle of your meal as soon as you found the defect. So, in a normal way, the person has to return that immediately. That's the honor that he has as a Muslim. That if he sat on that defect, then he says, Khalas, I no longer have the right, even if that other person doesn't know. Allah knows that I no longer have the right to return this defective item. And the defect is considered in the usage of the item and the quantity of the item. That means the amount of it. So it might be deficient in amount, like it's missing a piece. When we say the value, that means that it might be that it's supposed to have such and such value, but it doesn't. What you purchased actually is not fitting the description. It doesn't have the value. You might say, what is this? What is this? Some cheap plastic you gave me here? This is not the deal. So it could be the defect in the value. It could be in the quantity, and it could be in the usage. So it doesn't work properly. Any question? Authorization. It is permissible for a person to authorize something to do anything that is permissible for him to do himself, as well as to be authorized to do such a thing. So that's a general rule. Anything you can do for yourself, you can authorize someone to do it for you, with some restrictions. You cannot authorize a person to do everything for you. I mean that just like I stated. Like, it's not valid for you to say to someone, I authorize you to do everything for me. So that is invalid. Also, you cannot authorize a person to do your personal worships, your personal bodily worships, like the prayer and the fasting. You can authorize a person to distribute your zakah money. Also, sometimes the sick person can authorize someone to perform Hajj on his behalf. It is permissible for a person to authorize someone to do anything that is permissible for him to do himself. So, for example, is a man permitted to divorce his wife? Yes. Then he is permitted to authorize someone to use his divorces. So he could say to his friend, I authorize you with my divorces. Then his friend could pronounce divorces against his wife. Or he could say to his own wife, I authorize you with one divorce, for example. Just so you don't get carried away. Can a woman give herself away in marriage? No, according to Ash-Shafi'i. So she cannot authorize someone to give her away in marriage. You cannot authorize someone to do something for you that you cannot do for yourself. Rather, you can authorize someone to do for you what you can do for yourself. I'm not sure if power of attorney is the perfect word here, but power of attorney is authorization. Just be careful if you do a power of attorney. Be careful to basically not say, I authorize this person to do everything for me, because that's not valid. Specifically list all of the things that you authorize. One does not confess on behalf of his authorizer except with his permission, such as an attorney. An attorney is a type of authorized person. So he would not confess on behalf of his authorizer without his permission. The authorized one is entrusted with whatever he takes possession of. It means he's responsible for it. And whatever dealings he performs. And he's obligated to do his best in those dealings. In other words, the authorized person, when it comes to doing dealings on behalf of another, and we're not talking about being hired, even though, yeah, you are going to be authorized if you're hired to do that job. That's a type of authorization. But I'm not talking about a hiring contract. I'm talking about a mere authorization only to act on another person's behalf. This authorized person is obligated to do what is most advantageous for his authorizer. That means to do what brings him the greatest benefit. He does not have to guarantee it, whatever it was he was authorized with, like if it was an item, if he was given an item, for example. He does not have to guarantee it unless he was negligent. That means as long as he took care of it properly, then you cannot basically sue him for damages. Whatever it was that got destroyed in his possession. It was in his possession and it got destroyed. Does he owe you? Only if he was negligent. If he was not negligent, then he does not owe you even though it was in his possession. That means he took care of it properly. He did everything he was supposed to do. Whatever happened was outside of his power, although it was in his possession. So he does not have to guarantee it unless he was negligent. It is not permissible for him to sell or buy except under 3 conditions, this authorized person. That he sells at market price, not below. So that means market price or higher. That he takes immediate payment in cash, not credit, not I'll pay you later. And that cash has to be the currency of the town, not foreign currency. It is not permissible for one to sell to himself. That's an important case because you might find yourself doing that, or someone might find himself doing that. You're in a store, authorized to sell for someone in whatever capacity, whether it was you're just doing him a favor or whatever, you're hired. And you say, oh, look at that nice bag of chips there. I'll just take this nice shiny 25-cent piece out of my pocket, put it into the cash register, and take this bag of chips. And everything is fine. No, that's invalid. So you cannot sell to yourself. So what do? Wait for the owner to come or anyone who's authorized and then say, sell this to me. Authorization is a non-binding deal and both parties have the right to cancel whenever they want. It is voided by the death of one of them. That means that whenever one of those two dies, that authorization is invalidated. is nullified. And either one of them can get out of it at any time. So the authorizer can say to him, hey, listen, you're not authorized anymore. Don't deal with my stuff. Or the other person can say, I don't want to be authorized anymore. I'm done. Thanks. See you later. Here it says authorization is a non-binding deal. This point is one of the very important points when it comes to deals. Binding or non-binding. All of those deals are three types. Either a binding deal from both sides. That means neither side can get out of it. That means you have to complete the deal. Then you're done. There's non-binding from both sides, like the authorization. That means that both sides can get out anytime they want. And then there is non-binding from one side and binding from the other side. That's the third type. An example is collateral, which inshallah we'll come to talk about. Collateral is, under conditions, binding from one side, that's the side of the person who put up the collateral, non-binding from the other side, that's the side of the person who took the collateral. Another example is the contract that the slave does to purchase his freedom. It is non-binding from one side, which is the side of the slave. He's allowed to get out of it anytime he wants. Binding from the other side, that's the side of the master. He's not allowed to cancel it. Question: say if one sells a product in a country that the seller is not originally from but wants funds from his own country. Is that valid? Yes. He can say, I sell you this item for 100 American dollars. That's valid. Or I sell you this for 100 British pounds. Specifically. Doesn't even have to be from your own country. Whatever it is that you do the deal for. You said some stores have an open return policy and take things back even if they aren't defective. Would it be invalid to return an item in this case even if they accept? According to Ash-Shafi'i, if the deal is you can buy this item and you can return it anytime or anything more than 3 days, you can cancel the sale at any time or anything more than 3 days, the entire sale is invalid according to Ash-Shafi'i. According to other than Ash-Shafi'i, outside of Ash-Shafi'i school, yes, you can do it without going into details. All right, let's move on now to talk about the gift. These dealings are very easy, aren't they? Now, of course, there's more details behind these things, but it's very easy. So just get the gist of them and start practicing them. They'll just start clicking like clockwork. It all fits together. Like Legos. The gift. Everything that is permissible to sell is permissible to give as a gift. So that's a type of deal. The gift is not binding except by taking possession. In other words, you have something to give to a person, a gift. So he's sitting across the table from you. So you slide it over to him and say, this is for you. And then you guys continue your conversation, whatever. And he never took possession of it. So if you just decided you want to take it back and you reached out and grabbed it and took it back, then that's fine. That's valid. The gift is not binding until the recipient takes possession. If who was given the gift took possession of it, the giver has no right to retract it except the parent. The parent is allowed to retract the gift that he gave to the child. Now, there's more details about the gift, but I took that stuff out for our purposes, for what it is that I would like to do with you brothers and sisters. Any question about the gift? That's pretty simple, yes? So if someone gives you a gift and you want to keep it, take it in your hand. Then it's yours. Now, the next section is deposit. And the reason why I wanted to talk about deposit before we talk about renting and hiring is because it is a common practice as far as I know, in the United States. I don't know if it's different anywhere in the United States, and I don't know if it's different outside of the United States. It is a common practice for someone who's renting, especially a living quarters, to take a deposit. And that's not valid. You cannot make a person give you a deposit. So let's look at the rules of deposit. A deposit is a trust. That means you're giving it to someone to hold. Not you're being forced. It's not a condition of your deal. The deposit is not a condition of your deal. The deposit is not insurance. That's insurance, what those people are doing. That's not valid. Also, if the deposit is a trust, that means that you're not allowed to spend it or do anything with it. So how many people are taking deposits when they rent their properties? Muslims are taking deposits, mixing that deposit money with their money and spending it. And then when the deal is over, they give them their deposit back? No, what they're doing is giving them an equal value, but they're not giving them their deposit. That's what a deposit is, a real deposit. It is recommended for the one who can fulfill that trust to accept it. Why? Because that's helping the Muslim. So it's sunnah for you to accept that deposit if you can fulfill the trust. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "Wallahu fi awni al-abdi ma dama al-abdu fi awni akhih," or kama qal, which means Allah assists the slave as long as the slave assists his brother. So if someone came to you saying, "Can you hold this item for me while I travel," for example, or while I'm out of town, or while I'm away, and you accept that, then you correct your intention, inshallah, for helping a Muslim. It's sunnah for you to do that. If you know of yourself that you will not fulfill that you will destroy his property, that you can't control the people in your house, and that his stuff will get stolen or ruined, do not accept. One must safeguard it in a way that something like it is safeguarded. Each thing has its own consideration. How do you safeguard a car? It could be by putting it in a garage. It could be by putting it behind a locked gate. It depends. It could be by just parking it on the sidewalk. How do you safeguard furniture? By putting it in the house and closing the door and locking the door. How do you safeguard, let's say, a diamond or a pistol? Maybe you put it in a safe, for example. So when you accept a deposit from someone to take care of it, then you need to safeguard it like that thing is safeguarded. So if it's not, let's say, for example, a person said, "Can you hold this $10,000 cash for me, please?" Halal, of course. And you say, "Yeah, sure, I'll hold that for you. I'll put it right here in my pocket." No, that's not a valid place for safeguarding $10,000 cash. So if you lost it, then you have to pay it back because that's negligence. He does not guarantee damages except for negligence, just like the previous case. The claim of the one who accepted the deposit that he returned it to the one who made the deposit is accepted. meaning to the judge, not to the one who knows that he didn't get his stuff back. That means you took him to the Muslim judge and said to him, I gave him such and such to hold for me. I came back and he never gave it back to me. So the judge says to him, what say you? He says, I gave it back. Now, I'm not going through all the details of a court procedure Islamically, but the judge will rule in favor for the one who accepted the deposit in the first place. Anyone know why? Can we get a 10 count on that one? Why does the judge accept the saying of the one who took the deposit, that he claims he returned it? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Because the depositor trusted him, correct? That was your man. He was the one that you asked him to take the stuff in the first place. If he was requested to return it, but did not do so until the item perished, he guarantees it. He has to pay it back because then he was negligent. All right. The author said, renting and hiring. It is valid to rent or hire everything in which there is benefit without the consumption of its entity. That means you can't rent something that goes away. Like you don't rent an ice cream cone, for example. And its benefit has to be a religiously recognized benefit. So you cannot rent an apple to sniff it. You cannot rent or hire a woman for prostitution. Also, you cannot hire a singer. You cannot hire a singer. That's not a religiously recognized benefit. You can give a singer a gift if you want. And not only is it not a religiously recognized benefit, also it is a risky deal. We talked about risky deals. And if you think that that's not a risky deal, then you just look into the countless music artists who have been cheated. They were rich one day and they were broke the next day. How many? There's so many of them, you start watching those stories, they're interesting at first. After a while, it gets boring because they did it so much. There's people in that industry, their job is to find fools who want to become famous and maybe get at least one hit, if not more, take as much money from them as they can, and throw their empty husks away. While the other person who's aspiring to be an artist, a singer, or whatever, he's dazzled and wants to get famous and wants everyone to hear his song and sing his song. This is not a valid deal. With the condition that its benefit is specified to one of two matters: a particular time or a specific job. Hire for the time or hire for the job. Last week when we talked a little bit about this, a question came at least twice, maybe 3 times in different ways. And the question was basically, we gave the example of a painter. And the question was, well, what if the guy comes back and he says, I need another bucket of paint, for example? So what do? Look here. What did you hire him for? You hired him for his time, or you hired him for a job? If the time ran out, and that's why he came back to you and he told you there's no more time, you want to hire me for some more time? Then you can make a new contract. If you hired him for a job, that means you didn't hire him for his time. You hired him for the task to be completed. And especially in the case where you paid him, did he take all of the money? Yes. So, do you want him coming back to you telling you why the job couldn't be done? And you, as a truthful trades Muslim with integrity, and I'm reminding myself, who agreed to a task when you were hired for it, you want to go back to that person who paid you, or who at least will pay you faithfully, and tell him why you couldn't fulfill your end of the bargain? No. So he ran out of paint. So what do you want to do? Spend a little bit of your money and go get some more paint, if that's what has to be done, so that you finish the job that you agreed to do. Don't come back to me, for example, telling me why you couldn't finish the job and I paid you. You want to give me some of my money back then? No? Then get the job done. A particular time or a specific job. You can't mix them. So you can't say to the person, I hire you to paint this entire wall in 3 hours. That's invalid because you specified the task and the time. So either you say, I hire you for 3 hours, or you say, I hire you to paint this entire wall. And then it's obvious what's the problem if you mix those, right? Payment is due immediately. That means you pay your employee upfront. It is valid to specify delay payment. That means unless you agree otherwise. If you don't agree to a delayed payment or a deferred payment or whatever your agreement is to be paid every week, every other day, every day, whatever, then you pay him upfront. Well, what if he didn't know that that's the religious rule? You, as the truthful trades Muslim, will do so. Or you will just, if you don't want to get involved in that, you say to him from the beginning, I'll pay you like this. Do you accept? But remember, brothers and sisters, okay, somebody's hiring you for a job. Okay, he's the boss technically. But in a way, he doesn't have an advantage over you being the boss. He's the boss with the meaning that he's paying you, but also you're doing something. It's just like a sale. When you go and buy something from someone, aren't you giving him something? You're getting something and he's getting something. It's a two-way street. Same thing. It's not a one-way street that because he's paying you, then that's it and you're a peon. No. So you also make sure that you negotiate everything that you want before you get involved in the deal. Tell him, I want to be paid this much. I want to be paid this frequently. And I want to be hired like this, not like that. Do you accept? The renting and hiring contract is not invalidated by the death of either of the two contractors. What that means is that renting and hiring is binding from both sides. It's so binding that if one of them dies, the contract is still valid. That means, for example, I'm renting a house from, or someone is renting a house from someone else. A is renting a house from B, and B dies. Does that mean now that A is out on the street and his contract is done? No. Then the deal transfers to his heirs, and then he completes the deal with them. It is invalidated by the destruction of the rented or hired item or person. So when you rent or hire someone or something specific, if you hired me and then I died, then khalas, the contract is done. If you rented my house but the house crumbled, the house is demolished now, so the contract is done. Then you need to calculate how much is owed. Then you calculate how much is owed. For example, if the deal was you stay in this house for $100 per month, for 12 months. And then after 6 months, the house crumbled. Now the deal is over. How much does the person have to pay? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Half, thank you. 6 months, thank you. I'll give you that. It's fine. Might have been after the buzzer, but the ball was in the air, so it's okay. MashaAllah. So, the renting/hiring contract is not invalidated by the death of either of the two contractors. So, it's binding from both sides. When we say renting and hiring is binding from both sides, that means what? That means you cannot fire and you cannot quit. Rather, what do? You complete the deal. And if you understand this, then that makes it clearer for you that when you rent or hire, you need to specify exactly what's the benefit. Meaning, you don't hire a person indefinitely, and you don't rent a home indefinitely. That's invalid. What you can do is, let's say you have a tenant that plans on staying, and they pay you. So what do you want to do? You can say, okay, let's make a deal for 6 months. But now they're locked in for 6 months. You too. That means if they don't pay you, you can't kick them out. Okay? So maybe you might want to just make a new deal every month. At the beginning of the next month, say, okay, I'll rent this for another month. I rent for another month. I rent for another month. Like that. That way, it's clear when the deal is done. Same thing for being hired. So when the company says, we hire you, and that's it. How long? Oh, I don't know. You can work for us. If you work for us for 20 years, we'll give you a pension. That's not valid. You need to be able to have something that you can complete it. Something you agree to and you complete it. And they also agree and complete. They pay you a complete amount that's known and you fulfill something that's known. A known time and it's done and you're finished. If you want to do business again, do a new deal. Or a known task, it's done and it's finished. You want to do more business, do a new deal. For your information, some scholars said, similar to selling, that if the renting contract is known, like if the stipulation is known between you, you don't have to keep repeating it. Meaning, didn't some scholars say that in a sale you have to say words for the sale to be valid? And other scholars said, you don't have to say words as long as you do the sale normally. Like a person just brings the merchandise, puts it on the counter, gives you the money, you give him his change back, no words are exchanged, and then he leaves. Some said that's valid as long as you do what's normal among the people. Same thing they said for the renting and hiring. So if it's repetitive, like you're doing the same job every day, or like, you're living in the same place every month, then according to that, you can just keep, it's like became known to you and you're doing it in a normal way. But if it's not something that's known, then you need to be specific. You need to clearly state it. And the renter or hirer does not guarantee damages except for negligence. Wallahu subhanahu wa ta'ala a'lam. You said when someone rents a house or an apartment, for example, they are allowed to